as you can hear, actually had a special request from someone who'll get a recording of this service. So we are all set to go. As we go through the service, of course, it's New Year's Eve, so think of New Year's Eve kind of things. Resolutions, if you have any, you want to share in the chat. New Year's wishes. Anything but Shana Tova will do. Actually, Shana Tova will do too. If you can come up with a 6-word expression for, the year that's passed, the year that's coming, something like that, you can do that too. And anyway, we shall start. And Leo is here with us today to co-lead the service. So I'm very happy to welcome them. And we begin. Yedid Nefesh.
Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman Mishoch Avdach El Ritzonach Yarutz Avdach Kemo Haya Yishtachaveh El Muhadara Yerav Lo Yedidutach Minofetzu Vechotam Adonai Ziv Haolam Nafshi Cholat Avata Ana El Narefanala Yeharot Lach Noam Ziva Az Tischazek V'titrofeh V'haitalach Shivchat Olam Vatik Yamur Rachamecha V'chusna Al Benohavach Ki Zakama Nichsof Nichsaf Liros Psiferes Uza Ana Eli Mahmad Libi Hushana Ve'al Titalam Higalena Ufros Chaviv Alai Et Sukat Shelomach Tahir Eretz Mikvodach Nagila V'nismecha bach Maher Ahuv Kiva Moed V'choneni Ki Me'olam
And Shabbat Shalom once again to those who have just come aboard. I'm going to be sharing the Siddur here so you can all see it, but I will also put into the chat, now that people are here, the PDF of the Siddur. If you want to follow the service on your own, you can click on that and you'll see it up on your browser, on your screen. So we're going to continue now with Lechu Neranena. It's on page 11.
Lechu Neranena l'Adonai nari al tzur yishenu. Lechu ranana Adonai nari alatzur Yishenu nekad mafanav betoda bizmirot nari alo nekad mafanav betoda bizmirot nari alo. Obaim shana kupedor ve'omaram toifabatein ve'hein moyadu drachai asher nishbati ve'afihi im yivaun el menuchati.
We'll go on to the next of the Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat, Shir Adonai.
Shiru ladonai shir chadash, shiru ladonai kol haaretz, shiru ladonai baruch shemo, basru miyom le'yom yeshuato, sapru b'goyim kevodo b'chol ha'amim niflotav, ki gadol Adonai umulal me'od, norahu Al kol Elohim ma'idai ki kol Elohe ha'amim elilim ba'adonai shamayim asa hod v'hadar lefanav oz betiferet v'mikdasho havul Adonai mishmechot amim havul Adonai kavod va'oz havul Adonai kevod Sehu mincha uvo lechatzrotav v'eidai hishtachavu ladonai behadrat kodesh chilu mifanav kol haaretz imru bagoyim Adonai malach haftikon tevel ba'al timot yadinamim b'mesharim yesmechu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz yiram hayam Umelo Yalos Shaddai Vechol Asher Bo Yairai Az Yiranenu Kolatze Ya'ar Lifnei Adonai Kiva Lishpot Haaretz Yishpot Tevel Betzedek Ve'amim Be'emunato Yadai Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Rabbi, you're muted.
I know. I must admit, I muted myself so I could sing along with you. It's otherwise it gets.
Everyone does.
Yeah, well, that because I love singing with you when you lead services and we are together on the bima or outside. But in this case, it's better to mute to sing along. Anyway, so the next prayer we're going to do is one that I know you love to lead, and that is Ana B'Koach, this mystical Kabbalistic lead-in to Lecha Dodi. And we have people who are here today who haven't heard you explain it in the past. So I'd love if you just give a couple of words of introduction before we start.
Sure. So Kabbalat Shabbat is it starts with a series of psalms that like ramp us up and kind of drive us through the week. I think there's one for each of the weekdays, and we're meant to like look back and kind of bring ourselves on a journey from the beginning of the week right up until now, and we're about to enter Shabbos. And just before we do that, we have this really internal meditative prayer that reminds us that God is here and listening and watching out, and it's kind of we're calling out to God to like, hey, please pay attention, and in a way God is kind of responding to us by sending the Shabbos bride, and giving us Shabbos, showing us the like reminder of this covenant that we have together. And so
it actually spells out the name of God in some Kabbalistic beliefs through a sort of a mystical combination. So let's go to it.
Yeah, I invite you to sing along if you know it, or just close your eyes and feel it. Ana bekoach gedulat yamincha Atir tzurura kabel rinat amcha, sagvenu tarenu nora. Anna bekoach gedulat yemincha, tatir tzurura, kabel rinat amecha, sagvenu tarenu nora. Yidda-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai, 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 yidda-dai-dai-dai, yidda-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai, 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 yidda-dai-dai-dai.
And with that build-up, how could we not go through all of Lecha Dodi and build up even more to the welcoming of Shabbat? So we're going to do that now. Again, stay muted, but sing along. And if you'd like to put into the chat maybe a New Year's resolution for yourself or for the world, or a 6-word expression of what this year means to you, or just simple New Year's greetings, let's make this special.
Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad, ishmi'anu el hamnuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shem ol tiferet ve'litila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekavela, likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor habaracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maseh v'machshava tila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela, lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela, mikdash melech ir melucha, kum yitzei mitoch ha'hafecha, rav lach shemet ve'ebek habacha, vehu yachamul alayich chemla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela, lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela. Hihitna ari me'afar kumi, livshi bigdei tifartecha mi, al yad ben ishai besalach mi, korva el nafshi ge'ala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela, lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela. Hitoreri, kiva orech, kumi uri, shir daberi, kivod Adonai alayich nidla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela, lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela. Lo tevoshi v'lo tikal mima, tishtochachi umatehemi bach yechesu ani ami v'nivneta ir al tila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela, v'hayu mishivsoch shosaich v'rachaku kol mevalayich, yasis alayich Elohaich, ki imsos chatana kala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela. Yamin usmol tifrotzi v'et Adonai taritzi al yad ish, Ben parzi v'nismecha v'nagila
Lecha dodi nikra kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvitzala toch emune am segula boi chala lecha
dodi likra
kala
kala.
p'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Okay. So if we were standing, we can all be seated. And I love some of the messages that have been coming through. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. This is a way to really personalize the service a little bit more. And for us to express the gratitude that we feel for just having reached this moment. And we can't take that for granted, certainly not now. So let's continue with the prayer of gratitude, Mizmor Shir, as we go on to the next, to page 27.
Mizmor Shir, Leyom HaShabbat. Mizmor Shir, Leyom HaShabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lehagid baboker chastecha, bemunatecha balelot. Tzadik katamar hifa, ke'erez balvanon yizga, shatulim bevet Adonai, bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu. Od yenun beseva, deshenim merananim iu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri tzuri velo avlata bo.
And Shabbat Shalom once again. Welcome to everyone. And we continue now with the call to prayer, the Baruch Hu. And I'll return us to a shared screen as we rise, if able.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed.
And we're seated, Baruch Adonai. The prayer of the cycles of time. Baruch Adonai, our God of sovereign time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, who rolls light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Living and ever-present God, may you rule, be with us forever and ever. Baruch Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk.
Umavir yom uvevin laila, umevdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai Tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo chalenu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Ariv haravim.
Ahavat Olam on page 40.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אב עמו ישראל.
Shema.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשופך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
And we continue with the rest of the Shema over the next couple of paragraphs onto page 42.
אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Mi chamocha, page 44.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם, משה ומרים מבני ישראל, לחנו שירה ושמחה רבה, ויאמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדבר קודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקעם לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי אנו ויאמרו, אדוני לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני
Shemo.
Yisrael.
Now Hashkivenu, prayer for peace and security. We pray for healing as well. And if you'd like to place any names into the chat, we pray for this new year too. So I'd like at this point to read that beautiful poem that Amanda Gorman wrote on behalf of this new year as a prayer for our country, for a new day. May this be the day we come together. Mourning we come to mend, withered we come to weather, torn we come to tend, battered we come to better. Tethered by this year of yearning, we are learning that though we weren't ready for this, we have been readied by it. We steadily vow that no matter how we are weighed down, we must always pave a way forward. This hope is our door, our portal. Even if we never get back to normal, someday we can venture beyond it, to leave the known and to take the first steps. So let us not return to what was normal, but reach toward what is next. What was cursed, we will cure. What was plagued, we will prove pure. Where we tend to argue, we will try to agree. Those fortunes we forswore, now the future we foresee. Where we weren't aware, we're now awake. Those moments we missed are now these moments we make. The moments we meet and our hearts, once altogether beaten, now altogether beat. Come, look up with kindness yet, for even solace can be sourced from sorrow. We remember not just for the sake of yesterday, but to take on tomorrow. We heed this old spirit in a new day's lyric. In our hearts we hear it. For auld lang syne, my dear, for auld lang syne, be bold, sang time this year. Be bold, sang time. For when you honor yesterday, tomorrow you will find. Know what we fought need not be forgot, nor for none. It defines us, binds us as one. Come over, join this day just begun. Forever we come together, we will forever overcome. I couldn't do justice to it. Beautiful words, really, just a beautiful poem and great expression of where we are now. Hashkivenu.
ושמור צאתנו בין חיים לשלום, מעתה ועד עולם, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני.
Shemo.
סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Bishamru.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם.
Oti leolam.
אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני
Asa Adonai.
את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש.
Shavat vainafash.
שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
So why don't we continue on to the silent Amida? We'll give people just a few moments to do that, but maybe introduce it with the Chatzi Kaddish. Okay, Leo. So we'll do that, and then of course people may rise if possible, and I'll put into the chat as well that poem in case people are interested in looking at that and meditating on that too.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
יעמד דברך ירצה וימליך מלכותה בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי לקודשא ברכו לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה נחמתה תמירן בעלמא ויאמרו amen.
So you can either follow along with the Amida or on your own, and of course also download the poem and reflect on that, or place into the chat any more New Year's thoughts and resolutions for us. Feel free to go at your own pace. Leo will now lead us in Shalom Rav, prayer for peace.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Ra Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Ra Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
So thank you. Thanks so much, Leo, for leading us through. We still have a little bit of service left to go, and of course, Warner's Kaddish at the end. But hey, we have a huge audience here. It's, almost as many as Times Square. So thought I'd talk a little about plagues, because what would you want to do when you're in the middle of a pandemic more than talk about plagues? Well, this week's portion contains the first 7 of the 10 plagues. It's, the whole Exodus story. We began it last week. So this is as good a time as any to ask the question, what makes for a good plague? What would central casting order up if you were to say, I want a plague? I want 10 of them. And, well, of course, there are a couple of reasons where it makes sense to really be talking about it tonight. One is what we're living through, what we're going through. If you were to look up plague in the dictionary right now, you'd probably see something looking like a white golf ball with those little red spikes. Second reason, though, that actually there's another plague that was in the news this week. You may have seen it in the New York Times. I'll just jog your memory. Avian flu, bird flu, in Israel. It's been a pretty bad outbreak, pretty big deal. That was in the New York Times. This is from Haaretz. Israel's bird flu outbreak is a wholly man-made disaster, and I'll get into why, but it's front page news. And yeah, it's been a problem. It's one of the worst blows. It's been called one of the worst blows to wildlife in Israel's history. There have been widespread infections on chicken and turkey farms, and there's now a severe egg shortage in Israel, which must be, driving all of the chefs crazy with all the things that they use eggs for. There's a shortfall of 15 million eggs, and that's no joke. I really wish I could hear you laughing right now, but, this is the problem. Also, 5,000 migratory cranes have died. And this is really, really the crux of the tragedy, because the north of Israel is one of the most important migration routes in the world. It's right at the nexus, as the Middle East is, as Israel is, between Europe, Asia, and Africa. And they come every year, and they're all getting sick, and many are dying. And it's affecting other species as well, like hunting dogs. They've had to cut short the hunting season. So this plague is really bad. And by the way, it is one of the 10 plagues, because you think of cattle disease, it's an animal disease, a disease that wipes out vast populations of animals. And we know that these diseases tend to cross species lines. And, we know that COVID has also wiped out vast populations. So this is a good week to be talking about 10 plagues. So the question that we need to ask is there anything good that can be said about the plagues, or any plague? And I actually think there is. To stick with my egg theme, I'd love to look at the 10 plagues right now, sunny side up. This is really torture for me to have you all muted and not hear any laughter, but what can you do? So what are the good things that we can learn about the plagues? Of course, the 10 plagues in Egypt led to freedom from slavery. That's a pretty good thing. And they led to a good part of our Seder, although we have to spill out some of the wine, so we get to drink less wine, but still a good thing. So let's talk about the original plagues, though. They brought people together. That's the first thing. At least the first 3 plagues did. The first 3 plagues were shared by everyone. The Israelites also had to deal with the blood and the frogs. They had to deal with the first 3 plagues. And so that gave an opportunity for all the groups in Egypt, all the peoples in Egypt, to pool their resources, to come together, to have sympathy for one another, and to fight the common threat, which was the plague. Didn't happen. I mean, maybe God wanted that to happen, but they never started working together. Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and you know what happens after that. So we have to look elsewhere for ways that these plagues were blessings, potentially at least. So let's look at them in the abstract. In the abstract, each plague is a blessing. Blood is not a plague. It's the very stuff of life. Frogs are not plagues. Some get turned into princes. Bugs are not plagues. They maintain a precious balance of nature. Even death, one might say, is not a plague unto itself. I mean, when we hear about a particular death, a specific person, I mean, God knows, Betty White today, what a week this has been. You know, John Madden, Archbishop, it's been crazy. And Harry Reid. I mean, every death is in itself, you know, tragic and sad in a way, or most deaths are. But death in and of itself, death in the abstract, is necessary for life to have any meaning at all. Darkness, the plague of darkness, is not a plague. We need night to balance day, to sort of recalibrate our internal clock. So anyway, again, a reminder to be muted. Okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna make sure everyone muted. Good, thank you. Hail, you know, seems pretty bad, but we need storms. We need even ones that include hail to replenish our water supply, to replenish the earth. So what really is the plague here? It's not all these individual things. The plague is excess. The plague becomes a plague when there's excess, when there's greed, when there's too much of it. I mean, water, or let's say blood in our bodies is needed. It is the stuff of life. But when it overflows into the water supply, into the Nile of all things, it's a curse. What sustains life suddenly brings death. Storms bring life. Extreme weather, as we know, we've seen all too often recently, bring death. Darkness is a prerequisite for life, but where there's no light at all, there's no photosynthesis, and there is death. The cattle disease in the Bible may actually have been caused by the same kinds of excesses as the bird flu in Israel. So let's talk about that bird flu again, because it was avoidable. When the Hula Valley in the north was drained in the early years of the state of Israel, migratory patterns were disrupted. So that process was reversed many years later as they refilled Lake Hula, the lake in the north of Israel. It's a beautiful place, and the birds returned. And they thought, no harm, no foul, everything was great. Except that the environmental system, the ecosystem of that area, was changed. So the birds began to feed on neighboring farms, and the farmers got a little upset about that. So they worked together with the tourism industry, and the government of Israel in general, and they created a system where tourists and others would feed the birds. The farmers would bring tons and tons of food to feed the birds so that they wouldn't feed off of their farms. They and you know, peanuts. They literally, the birds ate peanuts, the cranes, and corn, several tons a day. So that in turn, the cranes generated $40 million in tourism, for the state of Israel every year. It was a nice arrangement. Everything worked well, except here's the problem. The cranes didn't want to schlep back to Africa. It upset their whole migration system. So instead of schlepping back, why should they go down to Africa when they're getting all the food they could possibly need? They're literally working for peanuts up here or in Israel. All they could want, so they stayed put. You can call it the crane mutiny. I hear anything? And the park got crowded. The Hula Valley got crowded, much like those overcrowded chicken farms in Israel and many other places. And that's what caused this plague, this bird flu. Pure excess, overcrowding, pure greed. And then they're so close together, when one gets it, everyone gets it. Just like human beings in a stadium. Birds were not meant to live sedentary lives. They were, fish got to swim, birds got to fly, and they got to fly south. So we messed up our relationship with nature by this excess. But I said there's a sunny side to all of this. The sunny side is that we can correct these plagues. We can correct this one. That's the purpose of the special seventh year, the Shemitah year, which of course is this whole year on the Jewish calendar, so it doesn't end tonight at midnight. It continues to next Rosh Hashanah. It gives us time to replenish the land, to rededicate ourselves to fixing and rebalancing our relationship to the world around us. And it's given us another time out. The Shemitah has, but so has COVID. I mean, people are not completely backing away from civilization at the moment. We're not sequestered completely, but we do have a chance to rethink what's been happening. I saw one of the comments was, well, maybe we'll learn the lessons that we should have been learning over the last couple of years, certainly in how we deal with the world around us. So we have another chance to get it right. And hopefully there won't be more hardening of the heart and more short-sightedness, more rinse and repeat, and more plagues. At one point in the text in the Torah, the book of Exodus, the narrative makes a subtle change. For the first several plagues, you get the notion that Pharaoh has control when he hardens his heart. It's him. Pharaoh's the one doing the hardening. But once you get to the latter plagues, you get the sense that God is doing the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, that it has become a gut reaction, a reflex, devoid of thought, and he goes back again and again to the destructive pattern of forgetting the consequences of excess. We've done that too, again and again, time and again, and we've grown careless about COVID, about our planet, about our neighbors, about everything. But the hope resides in the plagues themselves, because if the real plague is excess, we simply need to learn to live with less, to desire less, to demand less, to waste less. Now, that's going to take some work. There was a report released just yesterday by an Israeli group, a charitable group called Leket Israel, that distributes food that would otherwise go to waste, sort of like day-old bread at a bagel store, except for the whole country. And they've estimated the cost of food waste in Israel in 2020 to have been $6 billion. About half the food that was prepared was thrown away. Half of the food was wasted. It's time to return to the land, to dwell with it, to have a Shabbat with the land, a Shemitah, to allow our planet to regenerate. If we can let that be our New Year's resolution, the world may truly be a better place when we ring in 2023. The cranes and the chickens are looking on with great interest. We may be reluctant to count our chickens, but they are counting on us. Shabbat Shalom. You may react now. And Leo, let's go ahead with the Kiddush.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kivanu b'charta Yotanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
Kadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. And now let's join together. Please rise if you are able for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzeher breshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpechot hadama, shelo sam chalkinu kahem vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. כתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Aside from the famous people that I mentioned earlier, we've suffered losses within our own congregation this week, and our deepest sympathies go out to Stacy Neckritz on the passing of her mother, Corinne Cookie Klein, and to Paula Schulman on the passing of her mother, Nina Rose Derman. We pray that the families be comforted among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. We also recall in loving memory this coming week the yahrzeits of Lawrence Begler, Richard Bell, Thalik Brahm, David Brody, Fanny Fisher, Ron Gross, Joseph Gruber, Gayla Halbrecht, Dora Halpern, Fernando Halpern, Sarah Hayden, Mortiza Hendezada, Nusrat Hendezada, Shirley Kleiner, Dana Kraus, Louis Lepine, Ira Lubin, Ralph Marcel, Beatrice Martin, Leo Minskoff, Gerald Moskowitz, Lydia Neckritz, Bertha Ostreich, Richard Rosenthal, Lillian Samwick, Marilyn Schwartz, Selma Schwartz, Mildrose Schendel, Lola Silber, Jack Skydell, Lily Sosnowitz, Morton J. Stone, Jack Warren, and Irene Zweibel. And feel free to add any more names if you'd like to the chat. Those who mourn and those who recall Yahrzeit are invited to unmute and to join in the mourners Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah Yalma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah melorach v'yalam olmei al maya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu v'yela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran bi'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yeshvei tevel v'yimru Amen. So Shabbat Shalom to everyone, and you can unmute now if anyone wants to just share a New Year's thought. I have a feeling some plans needed to change at the last minute, and I'm sure there's a little bit of a sense of disappointment, but I hope at least we can all have enjoyed these moments together, and that'll help us to enjoy them even more if someone could share something light and humorous, or even just a nice little message. And I see in the chat there are some really nice things too. I was going to put together a little photo montage of highlights from the year. It was suggested, just didn't have the chance to get to it today. So this is what you get. But anyone want to say Happy New Year? Go ahead, Sandy.
I'm actually bringing to the fore. I'm trying to figure out how to get it closer to the middle and up a little.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Okay, go ahead, show it again.
Here it is. It's one of the plagues, the frogs, that came from Temple Bethel many years ago, and they're jumping frogs. And we bought them for our grandsons. And one was over yesterday, and we had a frog jumping marathon.
Wow.
And it was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad that we can provide plagues for you. I just,
Not really a plague. There were only 3 frogs, but they're very well trained, and they've really held up from our many years purchasing them at the gift shop. And the champion was 9 jumps.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So, so on our next marketing campaign, Temple Bethel, we plague our congregants. No, maybe not. Maybe next time. So, anyone else want to share a quick Happy New Year wish or thought, or?
Just a wish for good health for everybody.
Yes.
And Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
All right. Well, Shabbat Shalom to everyone, and really just try to enjoy as best you can while staying safe. So, Leo, thank you so much. And why don't you lead us out with Yigdal, and I'll put it back on the screen.
Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach nimtza v'yehineh et el metziuto echad v'yen yachid keyichudo nelam v'gam en sof le'achduto ein lo dmus haguf v'eino guf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon chol davar asher nivra rishon v'en reshit l'reshito hino adon olam v'chol notzar Yoreh gedulato malchuto shafan nevuato netano elan shesegulato v'tifarto lo kam b'Yisrael kemo sheod naviu mahabid et temunato Torah metnatan le'amoel al yad nevio neman beto lo yachal Yifa'el ve'lo yamir dato le'olamim mezulato Sofer v'yodea setarenu, mabit l'sof davar v'kadmato, gomel ish chesed kemifalo, noten l'rasha ra kerishato, yishlach l'ketz yamin meshichenu, liftot l'cha keketz yeshuato, metim Michael baruch asto, baruch adei shem tehilato, metim Michael baruch asto, Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato.
Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova. And the recording of this service will be available after Shabbat. I'll make sure to get it out to the congregation for anyone who might want it. Shabbat
Wonderful
Shalom.
service, Leo and Rabbi. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom.